Thank you very much, Henrik, for organizing this. A very good morning and good afternoon to some of you, and welcome to our virtual roundtable on EU-India post-crisis strategic partnership and cooperation, defining new priorities. And I'm Srita Haide. I have the pleasure to moderate the discussion. EU and India, when I think of it, it's all about 55 years of partnership and friendship, and sharing the same value of democracy, engaged together in various fields, as we all know, not only in trade and business and digitalization, but also climate, energy, environment, research, innovation, and many others. The COVID-19 pandemic caused a widespread global crisis. We are all dealing with it, which also impacted collaboration in many of those fields. So today we would like to understand what will the post-COVID world bring to the EU-India agenda? We will be focusing on how this strategic partnership will be taken forward, maybe defining new priorities on the agenda. And we have with us Honorable Ambassador Ugo Astuto, who is the Ambassador of the European Union to India. A very warm welcome and thank you for taking the time for us, and we are looking forward to your speech. I also welcome to our host, Mr. Ivan Stefanek, Member of the European Parliament, Member Committee on Internal Market and Consumer Protection. He is President of SME Europe of the European People's Party, a very active think tank group taking care of the interests of trade and business and of SMEs in Europe and bringing the European SMEs together with the rest of the world. A very good morning and warm welcome. We also have with us Mr. Julio Winkler, who is Vice Chair Committee on International Trade and the first Vice President SME Europe, a very devoted member of the Parliament, taking care also of the interest of the SMEs and trade and business. In between, we will be hearing statements from CEOs and board members and representatives from the corporate world and EU delegation, and I will definitely introduce them all at that point of time. So now I request our host, Mr. Ivan Stefanek, for his welcome words.
Thank you very much, Rita, for a very nice welcome. Greetings, everybody from Brussels. And on behalf of SME Europe, really, I'm honored to open this webinar, which is, I do believe, which is very, very timely after post-COVID crisis, because as Srita has mentioned already, EU and India, we share the same values. We share democratic values, we share fundamental freedoms, we share human rights, and I think this is the good base for cooperation. EU has invested into India 2.5 billion euro via EIB in infrastructure, energy and climate projects, and in terms of trade, EU is the second largest destination for Indian export, and it creates over 14% of total. As we know, EU-India summit has to be postponed from March, but I think also this debate will be a good base for work for EU-India summit, because there is a lot of topics, particularly in terms of trade, investment, but not only that, also we can develop the issues like reinforcing cooperation on foreign policy and promoting effective multilateralism, as we have learned during COVID crisis that we need more efficient mechanism. And I do believe also we can cooperate much more in developing security and defense cooperation. Last but not least, a couple of years ago, I visited beautiful India, and still I remember how I was impressed by digital skills of the people, and I see a huge potential of cooperation in IT sector, particularly if we talked about standards on 5G, intelligent transport system, Internet of Things, future network, and also artificial intelligence. I think there is plenty of room for cooperation, and really I'm looking forward to today's webinar. I'm looking forward to get new ideas because we have a really wonderful speakers and wonderful moderators. So thank you very much. Rita, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Stefanik, for these welcome words. And as you said, even I'm looking forward. We are having representatives from the European Parliament. We have entrepreneurs, we have diplomats, so we should have a debate as we are all Democrats. And now I request Mr. Winkler, first Vice President SME Europe, for his inspiring opening words.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Good morning. Good morning, dear Chairman Stefanets. Good morning, Your Excellency, Ambassador Astuto. Hello, Srita, and thank you for your moderation and preparations. And good morning to all participants to this debate, which I joined in the very last second because we had a very interesting debate with Phil Hogan, the Trade Commissioner of the European Commission, and with former Trade Commissioner and former WTO Director, Mr. Pascal Lamy. And what we were debating is exactly one of the points of my opening statement this morning, namely the trade policy review of the European Union. And I think that this trade policy review will be an excellent moment to discuss also the potential of our relations with India and the better tapping in this potential. So I just make this point on behalf of the European People's Party to Commissioner Hogan, that I consider that there are two regions or two potential partners in the region of Asia, which have a huge potential for us, for the European Union. One, of course, is India, and I will come back to those elements. And the second would be the region of Central Asia, which is also a region with huge potential, but with quite modest interaction with the European Union, at least from commercial and trade point of view. To present some of the elements to try to set the stage for this debate, the top list of trading partners of the European Union is mentioning India as the number 10 largest trading partner of the European Union. We have a volume of 80 billion total of trading goods in 2019. Of course, if you compare it with other countries as a number, it might seem big, but if you compare it with the potential and population of India, that is quite a small amount. Let's just remember that with China, the European Union exchanges with China amount to 1.5 billion each day. So it's a huge difference. We have an important presence as European Union companies in India as investors. Around 6,000 companies are present in India, and they create some 6 million jobs. It's about direct and indirect jobs. Of course, as I mentioned before, we can safely state that we have a huge untapped potential, and our relationship is not as advanced as with other partners of the European Union, but also not as advanced as the potential would be. FTA negotiations have started between EU and India in 2007. They have been suspended in 2013 because no progress have been achieved. Not a real progress has been achieved. I think the official sentence was a gap in the level of ambition. That was the official formula. Some hindering factors of those negotiations were market access provision. We had some sectors particularly important for the EU in which we could not obtain progress: automobile, wine and spirit sector. Then financial services sector, banking, insurance, e-commerce, which are quite closed in India. And of course, also at that time, we were negotiating on labor, environment and public procurement provisions. I said at that time, because of course today the European Union has totally different ambitions, much enhanced ambitions on environment, on climate, on labor law, and also on public procurement in a global context. So this is a situation, it would be not so very encouraging, but I think that maybe the COVID-19 pandemic should give us, or could give, a new momentum in our bilateral relations on trade and investment. Maybe we can, as they say always, that never waste a good crisis. Maybe we have this chance now as European Union, especially after the following 3 or 4 months, after the review of our trade policy, to put higher on the European Union agenda India as a potential partner. Of course, it takes 2 to tango, so it's not about only political will of the European side, but it is also about how these eventual ambitions would be received in India. We have, of course, new elements in our trade policy. First of all, for example, let's recall the tactics of the European Union, which divide investment and trade negotiations. So it is since our Singapore decision, it was what we did with Vietnam. So we negotiated a free trade agreement and an investment protection agreement with our partners in Vietnam. Probably, if I know exactly, I know some elements about the discussions in DG Trade, then I would say that there is more optimism in the Commission about the possibility of starting an investment agreement dialogue, then having an investment agreement eventually, and then making the next step towards a free trade agreement in future. It is the same that is undergoing with China. I would say not with the results that we should love in Brussels or in the European Union member states. There are modest results, but still the tactics are as I just mentioned them. Of course, I say it takes 2 to tango, because we have to remember that it was the Indian government which terminated all its bilateral investment agreements, bilateral investment treaties back in 2017. And of course, this is a new situation for European companies also, because European and global companies present in India, of course, they need investment protection provisions. So once again, let's hope and let's do something, maybe even our discussion today, but whatever else is possible on political and on economic field and on diplomatic field, of course, that we can transform the COVID-19 crisis in a new momentum, or a fresh start with our Indian relations. So the trade policy review is undergoing. This is an official public debate of the European Commission's DG Trade. It is open until the 15th of September. And what I am, and these are my final remarks, what I am making to you as an appeal, especially for the business representatives in this panel, but also for those who are participating to this discussion, that please use the possibility, the opportunity of the trade policy review. Any stakeholder can fill in responses to this review. The deadline is 15th of September. Then, of course, Commissioner Phil Hogan, as he just mentioned today in our meeting in the International Trade Committee, he said he will be back in September to the European Parliament, hopefully in person, also physically, to report about the submissions to the trade policy review, to report on the results and on the opinions of our stakeholders. So I think that this is a good tool now. I think this discussion is timely. It's a high-level discussion, and I think that we also can do our bit as the SME Europe of the European People's Party to try to find 2020 as a new starting moment of EU-India relations, globally also, but especially regarding investment and trade. So thank you very much for having these demands. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Winkler, for these very inspiring words. And you are right, it's a very high-level topic. Free trade agreement EU-India is at the same time a very emotional topic. And it's an ongoing discussion since 20 years. And last November, when Angela Merkel visited India, and there was a government consulting phase with the Prime Minister of India, she also emphasized on this particular agreement. So now we are coming to our ambassador, and we hope to get some information and more information insight to this topic. And as Germany is now having for the next 6 months the EU presidency, maybe there will be some good thoughts coming over. Mr. Ambassador, we are looking forward to your speech. Thanks for being here, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here with you all. Well, we are meeting in somewhat peculiar circumstances, it's a fact. The situation as it is today must invite us to some introspection and reflection on our future. We are facing major global challenges. We see the impact that the COVID crisis is having on our health, on the lives of the European population, and globally on the economies and on the environment. I think the one conclusion we can already draw is that we need collaboration. We need more global collaboration. We need the international community to come together. And I think that both the EU and India can play a key role in this respect. So we have to build a greener, digital, just and resilient future, as the President of the Commission said recently. And in order to do so, we have to reshape our economies. We need to respect and restore biodiversity. We need to cut pollution. The EU and India, I'm glad to say, can indeed work together in this global endeavor. And we can help to shape the global recovery in a way which is sustainable. Well, as you all know, the European Commission has proposed its recovery package recently, and the fallout of the crisis is such that we need to make investment on an unprecedented scale. These investments must be directed not just at rebuilding, at preserving the achievements of the past 70 years. But what we need to do is to be more ambitious. We want to build better. We want to reshape a European Union that is climate neutral, digital, and resilient. The fact is that we should be under no illusion. The climate crisis is still here. The biodiversity crisis has not gone away. These challenges need to be addressed. And the EU recovery strategy is underpinned by this new paradigm. We want to move away from the old carbon-based economic model. The new growth strategy, the European Green Deal, aims at boosting jobs and growth, but also the health of the environment, also sustainable future. So what we need, what we are going to do, following the lead of the recovery package, is a massive renovation of infrastructure, a massive boost towards a circular economy. We want to boost renewable energy, especially wind, solar, but also hydrogen. We want cleaner transports and logistics, including electric vehicles, and more rail travel and clean mobility. Now, as it happens, all of these areas are also relevant in the framework of the EU-India partnership. The European Union and India are already cooperating in the greening of the economy, so to say, for a sustainable modernization. You may recall that in the past few years, in various EU-India summits, we have approved several cooperative ventures in this respect. The EU-India Clean Energy Partnership, for instance, the EU-India Water Partnership. And in all these ventures, we are also encouraging EU companies to come in and supply cutting-edge technology to the Indian market. So in a post-pandemic world, I think the cooperation between the EU and India will be all the more important. We already share strong trade and investment ties, as Mr. Winkler has already said. We have a strong bilateral trade exceeding 100 billion euro. And investment ties are also significant. And the European Union is the first trade partner for India and one of the first partners also when it comes to investments. But there is still a lot of potential also that is left untapped, and we should unleash all the animal spirits of respecting entrepreneur in order to have this potential fulfilled. The evolving world scenario can indeed present more investment opportunities for India. I mean, we are all assisting to a shift in global supply chains. This presents an opportunity for India, obviously, but also for European companies, including small and medium enterprises who may be interested in exploring new business opportunities in India. I mean, obviously, India is not alone. It has a lot of competition, particularly from Asian peers, Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam, Thailand, you name it. I mean, they're all vying for a share, for a larger share in this shifting flow of foreign direct investment. So in this context, the speed and efficiency with which India will implement its structural reforms will be crucial. But it's a fact that India's large and actually growing domestic market is a strong asset when compared to its regional peers, which should invite European companies, including small and medium enterprises, to look into the Indian market. Now, the digital dimension is also key. Mr. Stefanec mentioned it, and I couldn't agree more. It's a central feature also in our strategy for the greening of the economy. That's true in Europe, and that's true also in India. The Indian digital sector has seen remarkable progress in the past few years. And again, as Mr. Stefanec said, when it comes to data protection or the 5G or artificial intelligence, both the EU and India face common challenges because we are open societies and we are democracies. We believe in pluralism. This means that the regulation also of these sectors, in drafting the regulation of these sectors, we face similar issues. And by working together, we can find satisfactory solutions. As Mr. Winkler said, I mean, we shall not lose sight of any of the EU-India free trade agreement for the future. Once we find more common ground for an ambitious and mutually beneficial FTA. In the meantime, however, I think we could indeed explore an investment protection agreement with India. And in any case, it's important to remind that we have a broad trade and economic dialogue with India. And we shall continue to look into ways and means to foster it. And here, let me recall that India will have the G20 presidency in 2022. I mean, the European Union and India can and shall work together in the G20, in the WTO, and in other fora to shape the global economic agenda. Let me conclude here by underscoring that indeed the COVID-19 crisis has sounded a clear alarm. We need to pay heed to this warning. We need to review our economic paradigm, and we need to work for a greener future. And we cannot do that alone as Europeans. We must act together with all our international partners for the sake of future generations. And it's a fact that India is a key strategic partner in this endeavor. We already have an open and developing conversation, and I'm sure in future we'll advance even more in fostering these objectives together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. Before going to other speakers, I will have one question for you. During this crisis phase, Europe, digitalization in Europe received a very special attention, starting from homeschooling up to home office. And India has some special competencies and skills and resources to contribute to digitalization. So how would you encourage Indian entrepreneurs in this particular respect to come together with EU, the demand which is here today?
Well, my understanding is that when it comes to the digital dimensions, there already is a pretty flourishing trade between the European Union and India, with, including when it comes to data exchanges. But what we can do as members of the EU institution or as EU member states is to create an environment which is conducive for this dialogue, for this trade to increase and to strengthen, to be strengthened. And that it's something we are doing actually. We have a regular conversation with India on issues related to the digital future, issues such as artificial intelligence or data protection. There is a lot of interest here in India about the experience of the GDPR. We've done several seminars. We do have regular interaction with Indian stakeholders in order to share our experience on GDPR. And I think we shall do more of that. I can sense there is a lot of interest on the Indian side to understand what we have been doing in Europe for the past few years. Again, based on the proposition that as open societies and democracies, we are facing the same challenges, and we can work together to find solutions.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Before we go, Mr. Stefanek, we were discussing so far about the free trade agreement. From EU's point of view, how important it is to have free trade agreement, you know, after a good experience with Singapore, Vietnam, now with India, and some encouraging words from that point of view.
Yeah, well, definitely India is the strategic partner, one of the most important partners. So particularly now in globalized world, we know that globalism will not die after post-pandemic. And I do believe we have to develop our relation with democratic world much more than, for example, with China. Saying that, we have to find some balance also with China in terms of trade and investments, but we prefer much more to develop the relation with democratic world. And this is not only about trade and investments, this is about multilateralism, this is about foreign policy cooperation and really cooperation on functioning multilateral scheme, which can help which can help manage crises like we experienced in last 3 months.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So now we go to the phase of intervention, voices from the industry and EU delegation. And it's my honor and pleasure to introduce a friend, Mr. Puneet Chatwal, who is a German of Indian origin. He prefers calling himself a Welser, but I try to call himself a Frankfurter. And he is Managing Director and CEO of Indian Hotels Company Limited. This is the Taj Hotel Group. I hope many of you have the pleasure of enjoying the hospitality of Taj Hotels in India, belongs to Tata. And dear Puneet, it's very nice to have you here. Before joining this role, he was long-term in Frankfurt, leading Steigenberger. So you are today leading South Asia's largest hospitality company. And this means it is almost 200 hotels across 4 continents and 12 countries. So what has been your first step to guide your organization through this phase? And apart from all the challenges, I would also like to know what other opportunities you have identified for your organization and your key to unlock these opportunities. Puneet, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Srita. So I think it's not a secret that hospitality aviation industry is among the worst hit across the globe, and including in India. It's suffering job losses. You have empty hotels, you have empty airports, you have empty airplanes. People have developed an inherent fear to travel, especially the advisory is coming, stay where you are and preferably stay at home. I think this has never been witnessed in the world, and it's very critical when we talk about all the statistics as Mr. Winkler gave in terms of the trading volumes, in terms of what China does in a day. But if we took a global view, the global GDP of approximately 10% is contributed through tourism. And more than 10% of the jobs created in the world are through tourism. And in India, the number is around 9%, and the direct and indirect jobs created across the globe is far higher than 10%. In India, it's around 12.5%. And all that is very questionable today. How much of that would survive this crisis? 50%, 60%, some even go and say 30, 40% in the short term, till a vaccine is found and everything comes back to normal. Having said that, a fundamental belief at Indian Hotels, which is a part of Tata Group, is that it's any kind of adversity can be overcome through the people you have. And those people, if they're unified in purpose and are driven by passion and pride, things should get easier. So in terms of our people, we try to take care of our people during this crisis. We try to take care of the communication that is open and transparent. And we try to empower them to take decisions, because it's very few people at work. Right? Because of the lockdown in most of the cities and most of the states in India, travel or travel ban in public transport is not that easy. So we've been hosting our people in our hotels, besides other people which I'll come to. When it comes to the purpose, so the purpose of the founder of Tata Group was your community is not just another stakeholder, rather the purpose of the existence of any business. And so during this time, we have served more than 2.2 million meals to medical staff, very strong in Mumbai. We started even a day before the lockdown was announced. We have hosted almost 50,000 room nights for staff not able to travel home. So they're staying in our hotels. So we are hosting the staff, as we have a lot of properties, especially in Mumbai, and the medical staff is getting food also in Bangalore, Coimbatore, in the city of Delhi. And we all created a common purpose, which is also financial. So looking after the community, but we had to press a reset button. And we gave up on our journey of Aspiration 2022, partially because we had achieved most of our goals already in 20, and partially because this was a time to reset your revenue initiatives, your spends, your excellence in terms of giving safety, security to all your stakeholders, and in terms of being very thrift and exercising asset management. All this kind of initiatives with the right kind of people always leads to certain tactics, and some of those tactics leads to innovation. So while I stayed almost 30 years in European Union, including my master's studies there, I should not be mistaken for the German sausage, which is also called Frankfurter. But so just on a lighter note, I would say that in my education in Europe and my experience, I never learned or did any kind of a case study how to survive when your revenue drops to zero. You know, if your airports are shut, all airport shops are shut, airlines are, shut down, hotels are shut, how to do business. So I think some of the innovations we came up are maybe very specific to India. Some of the innovations and tactics we came were common across the globe. So to answer you, Srita, yes, in such times we started something which we call hospitality at home, sending hampers of the day-to-day needs. We started a home delivery business of food, because what you see in my background is a picture of our restaurant, in our flagship at the Taj Mahal Palace Tower. So we started creating this kind of atmosphere, music, kind of those evenings, sending food from the restaurants. And obviously people have to be passionate to be able to do that. This is like switching gear, not 360 degrees, but maybe 3 times 360 degrees, having a people waiting to get a table in a restaurant versus everything shut down, and now you're trying to bring all this to their homes in the short term. And I think a sense of pride also helps. Very recently, Business Finance from UK, which does this every year, voted Taj as India's strongest brand. That is one of our 5 brands that we have. And but it's our backbone of the company. And it's also present in some significant locations, not yet in Brussels, but I'm hoping some of the people on this webinar will help us establish presence in Brussels. But we are in London, we are in New York, San Francisco, Cape Town, Dubai, etc. So I think the sense of pride comes if you are the nation's strongest brand, but also belonging to the nation's most valued brand as per the Business Finance, and doing the right things, which we have done for over 150 years as a group. And within the group, we are the oldest operating arm. There were some companies which were formed before, but the one which is in operation is us. And I think we're taking one step at a time. Yes, it's an industry which has been badly hurt, but travel, hospitality, good food, good wine, nice accommodation, a little bit of pampering is a fundamental need of every human being. And it's a matter of time it will bounce back. I think it's also an opportunity because EU is very rich in culture. And as Mr. Stefanet said, he visited this beautiful country of India. India is also very rich in culture and one of the oldest civilization. So I think there is a big opportunity to build some bridges also out there, some collaborations, and explore how in such difficult times, airlines, tourism, hospitality business could work together, which will foster not only billions of euros of trading volumes, but also create a better understanding of the cultures and will help us create not only through biodiversity and not only through digital a better world, but at the end of the day, it's still the humans doing it. And I think that would be wonderful. So that was from me, Srita.
Thank you very much, Punit. That was really very interesting. What I observed, your social media promotion, and you have so many chefs, and they were every day posting some new recipes, and people were liking it, enjoying it very much. So definitely this is the time to be innovative. Thank you. We will definitely come back to you with some more questions. We have with us digitalization, IT, software, offshoring, Mr. Amin Gajwani, who is Executive Vice President of Cybage. And Cybage is actually, when we are in Germany or in European Union, we know, mid-sized companies, SMEs are so valued, so important, because they are not really limited to one region or one town. They spread the services and business across the world. And Cybage is one such organization committed around the globe to provide technology solutions and engineering services to industries with almost 9,000 employees. Correct me, Ahmed, worldwide. And working from remote is actually nothing new to Cybage. So you have many thousands of employees around the globe catering to your clients. So how did you manage to engage them and motivate them? That would be very nice to understand. And apart from that, digitalization, as we were talking about today, has received a very special attention to this crisis phase. So especially in Europe, so starting from homeschooling till home office and every phase of our all-day life. So how would Cybage contribute with its technology solutions to accelerate recovery?
Thank you. Thanks, Srita. Good afternoon and good morning, everyone. As you rightly mentioned, by the way, Cybage is 6,500 people, so not 9,000. So it's always nice to be accurate about the numbers. A very important point that you mentioned, yes, we have for years in the outsourcing industry been used to working remotely. In fact, somewhere we have mastered the art of how to work remotely with our clients, understand them, be agile, be nimble, which is what is spoken about in today's times, is how you can do that. But a significant difference is we have always been agile with our clients. We've always been agile with the people we work globally. But within India, that has not been the case. Within India, the employees have always been very used to working in an environment where they are together, where they always interact with each other, because that always helps. It's never been a case of, yes, you have work from home policies which enable employees to work in times of where they need to work from home, but never on a continuous basis, unless for a medical reason. So when the entire process started, it just took us 2 days to actually have our 97% of our staff or 98% of our staff work from home effectively. And in the last 4 months, we have not had a single issue in terms of connectivity or productivity going down, or a client. We have 220 customers, not a single client coming up with a complaint saying that, I have not been able to get what I want. So that was, I believe, the easier part, because our infrastructure, our mechanism, our processes, our security guidelines, everything were very much tuned to work in that sense. But what we were not prepared was that all the employees who used to work together in a very socially active environment, because if you come to IT services in India, and you've been here a few times, it's a very lively environment. Where the HR is actually contributing tremendously in terms of not just the learning aspect of people, but also for their social, cultural aspect as well. Whether it's about recreational skills, whether it's about sporting activities, whether it's about festivals. India has so many different festivals as well. So all those events actually charged and motivated people towards their goals, because they worked remotely with their customers. They have never seen their customers unless when they visit over here or they travel. So the first few days definitely were very, very effective, because suddenly everyone was working from home and they wanted to be highly productive, and they were highly productive. But over a period of time, the mental fatigue starts setting in, because as you rightly said, there's homeschooling that's happening. There are couples working from home all the time. So there is never an issue of productivity or our clients not being happy, but it's about the mental health of the employees and the motivation level of the employees who are working within your organization. So during those times, our HR actually came up with activities, how we engage them. So numerous activities of online engagement, and because of being a digital organization, to execute those activities became very easy for us, because we do that for our clients. So whether it's about remotely, so we have these musical nights in our organization where the employees form a band and play. Now imagine doing that remotely and having an audience of 4,000 plus people listening to it, or having activities relating to technical conferences internal. We have done a lot of external ones, but the internal ones where the employees get together, whether it's a quiz, whether it's presenting a white paper, that also being done on a very large scale basis. So all those activities which we used to do, apart from some sporting events, all the activities that we used to do as an internal HR, we actually started doing them. There used to be Friday evening activities which every project manager did with his team to make sure that the exhaustion from a week doesn't pass on to the weekend, because the distinction between a work week and the weekend had diminished. It all merged into one. So many times people didn't know which day of the week it was. So to create that gap, to make people actually replenish themselves over the weekend so that they come back on a Monday morning fully charged up. So all those activities we did, and we did something very unique, which I did not hear of any other organization did that. Our entire leadership, which means right from our CEO level to our vice presidents, which is a small team of around 15 to 20 people, and the senior delivery people as well, we worked in office throughout the entire lockdown. So we have not worked from home. As you can see, I'm still in office, but not even in March, April, May, none of the days. We all, led from our CEO, worked in office. So our entire staff worked from home, but the leadership worked from office to ensure that whether it's our clients who get the service they want, whether it's the employees, to make sure when you execute activities to engage employees, you need to make sure that everything is in place. So to make that happen, certain fundamental leadership decisions, no matter what we say, have to be done when people are together. So you don't need to be physically sitting with each other, but you are in the same environment. You can just walk up to someone's office and talk to them. We all understand that. So at a leadership level, we made that call to do that. IT industry, unlike what Mr. Puneet was saying, has not been hit that badly. Though for us also, a good 20% plus of our revenues come from travel and hospitality, which has been very badly hit. But it has been substantially recovered by the digitization. So we work with tech companies. One of the advantages is, so we work with the people who create your collaborative tools like a Zoom or many other things. We work with antivirus, we work with business intelligence, machine learning companies. And all these came to the fore at this time because you needed more and more out of them. So those industries have actually grown. So to a large degree, the impact of travel and hospitality that had on us is actually nullified. I'm not saying 100%, but it has been significantly nullified by the technology companies and the technology advancements. And that was feasible because we had the leadership, all of us in office, and at the same time, we had employees who were very motivated to make it happen. So our responsibility was not just the clients so that the deliveries happen and they get what they want during these times, but the employees as well, who are constantly motivated, who are constantly in touch with their managers, and the HR plays its role as well. So that's something that we did very effectively.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think this is very, very important from organizational aspect, that when we are in this type of phase, in a crisis phase, that we give confidence that we are still there, we're still present to the market, to the customers, and definitely to the internal stakeholders, which Dutch is doing, which Cyberg is doing. These are really good examples to be inspired. So thank you very much. Now I have Mr. Yatindra Sharma with us. He is heading KHS, which is a brand, an international manufacturer of filling and packaging equipment for the beverage and food industry. And he's heading the operation in India. He's an entrepreneur, a very entrepreneurial-minded person. So nice to have you here, Mr. Sharma. You are leading an organization, and you said you are observing the phase now in India and outside, especially where we are trying to come back to work, which is challenging also. So what will be your 3 points you would like to advise your fellow entrepreneurs and maybe the government also to focus on?
Thank you, Srita, and thanks for inviting me to this very interesting panel discussion. 3 points which I would like to make, and these are very important for new geopolitical map, which is being drawn in this unprecedented COVID crisis. Economics is going to be the driver all over the world, and it is going to be redefined in terms of cooperation, business-wise, people-wise, and country-wise. So this will definitely require a new understanding between EU and India on certain areas where they need each other. So in my first point, I would like to say that India and EU will have to talk about education, where we know in India that our children, they go for higher education in other countries, and India spends a huge amount of money in terms of higher education. And there EU and India can work together and find a much better solution for students coming to EU. And that will definitely create a kind of economic advantage, what has been seen in USA by Indian professionals, the way in which they have contributed to growth of US. So it needs a very different understanding and agreement between EU and India. Second point, where India will definitely need a lot of business investments with entrepreneurs under Make in India program. And here, I think the sectors where EU can easily cooperate with Indian entrepreneurs, one is going to be the healthcare sector, right from hospital services to medical equipment to testing devices to vaccines. I mean, the field is pretty large, and world has seen that India has specialized in certain areas of healthcare industries. While we talk about drugs, they are being produced in India at a fraction of cost, which is being offered in EU and developed world. And there are many examples of healthcare sector where India will need that kind of cooperation. And I think Mr. Winkler, what he mentioned about cooperation between EU and India in clean technology, and that is something where India and EU should talk about a closer cooperation to create multiple investment opportunities and technical knowledge transfer to India. That is one, and that will definitely result into reverse investments in EU also. Second area, in terms of India, which needs to go forward, and that is going to be a technology in manufacturing. And this is where, you know, EU has got huge potential to cooperate with Indian entrepreneurs. I'm coming from engineering industry, and I see a huge potential in terms of some of the trade which is happening between EU and India right now in terms of automation products, in terms of electronic hardware, in terms of sensors. I mean, this is a huge area, and India has got a huge requirement, and this is definitely going to create a kind of a very closer cooperation between EU and India. So that is my first point. Second point, EU and India, where we have to develop a kind of a closer work group to address such pandemics in future. It is a wake-up call for all professionals, entrepreneurs, and politicians in India, and so will be also in EU. And I think we need to create a closer cooperation to prepare countries to handle such kind of pandemic. Likewise, we heard about China creating a hospital of 10,000 beds in 1 week and 10 days or kind of thing. I don't think that is a response what we need for such kind of future catastrophes. We need to talk about addressing these issues in a much organized manner, because at the end of the day, before livelihood, human life is important. So that is second point. And the third point, which I see in immediate terms, and that is where a closer cooperation is already happening in terms of finding a vaccine. And here I would request our EU colleagues as well as His Excellency that let us find a much closer cooperation, because the way in which I mentioned about healthcare sector and various industries in India who are already doing a roaring business in generic drugs all over the world. So finding a vaccine needs a much closer cooperation, and India will be able to produce such vaccines for large number of people at a fraction of cost. Likewise, our Indian entrepreneur from Serum Institute of India has already mentioned his target price for corona vaccine, and which is going to be a single shot vaccine, and which is 1,000 rupees, means I think maybe around 30 euro cents, or maybe sorry, maybe 10 euro, not more. So this is something where, in terms of addressing catastrophes in future, the knowledge flow should happen both ways, and capabilities must be tapped together, whereby we find a much better organized approach. Then, likewise, the kind of pain of this pandemic has been experienced all over the world. And we have seen even our infrastructure not able to help people and professionals who can do a job for want of infrastructure. I mean, they have been struggling to find a solution for people whose lives have been at risk. So these are my 3 points on submission. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sharma. I think you are right that at present, in terms of innovation and invention of vaccine and medicine, it's who is going to win the race. So we need to think about, you know, developing some collaborative approach to this topic. Before I go to my next speaker, I just would like to request Mr. Stefanek on one point to comment more, which he mentioned in his welcoming speech, that sustainable development, which includes definitely climate and environment. And Mr. Stefanek, you know, when we discuss about business, trade, and everything, especially in this phase where we are all, we think about, you know, how we can recover the economy. We focus more on the monetary side and the financial side. How important it is not to forget climate, technology, and environmental solutions, not to forget it on our agenda, that so that they still have a priority on the agenda.
Well, it's really crucial, and thank you for raising this point, because we are talking about sustainable development. If we talk about sustainability, we cannot talk only about short-term goals, and definitely we would like to prosper from long-term perspective. We have to take responsibility for our climate, and I would highlight once again our common roots, our democratic roots, because if we do understand that we have shared responsibility for our countries, we have the shared responsibility for our planet as well, and therefore climate agenda should be on top of this. As we know, in EU, it is really priority number one to build a non-carbon economy by 2050. And we need partners to protect our planet. And our first partners are our trading partners and our democratic partners. Therefore, I think the climate agenda will be always now our priority, even if we talk about trade and investment agreements. So I'm absolutely sure in next EU-India summit, it will be very high on the agenda as well.
Thank you very much. Now I go to our next speaker. I will talk to Ms. Jackas later on because I need some more information from her side. So our next speaker will be Mr. Kai Ressel, who is heading HABAUER, and HABAUER is taking care of climate, environment, especially water treatment. And you are with your company and your services already in India, working on the Holy River project, which is, and so at this stage, it will be very nice also to have your comments, how you see that countries not stop focusing on climate, water, and environment. So it will be very nice to have your statement, Mr. Ressel.
Thank you for the introduction, Rita. Good morning and good afternoon to ladies and gentlemen. Especially in times of crisis, people experience how important it is to have an intact environment. This is free of danger. A virus like COVID-19 is invisible, but this also applies to other dangers, whether it's fine dust in the air we breathe, bacteria, or contamination in water, or radiation environment. But clean air and safe drinking water are essential conditions for human survival on this planet. As long as this is not achievable for all the people, it must be a goal of all responsible organizations to work towards this goal. And I think one cannot therefore stop working to ensure that the climate and environment of water have optimal conditions. Stopping these efforts will destroy the results of the efforts made so far and will ultimately contribute to regression and deterioration of the present situation. And so it's a huge question how to encourage organizations to work on this very important issue. And the core competence of HABAUER India, as Rita said, is the production of safe drinking water, especially a crisis like COVID-19 shows how important it is to supply the people who had to leave the big cities in the lockdown to the home villages during the lockdown. And we would like to encourage the Indian authorities to create conditions outside the big cities as well, because the people have to live there. They leave the small villages to get a living in larger cities. But besides creating income opportunities, you need at these villages clean drinking water as a very important element. And we had the crisis, and our company in Kolkata with only 50 employees is still working. And we not just build these plants, but we also keep the plants in operation, because we have quite small buildings and we have small plants, and they can be operated by 1 or 2 people or employees, so that the COVID-19 danger is quite small to be infected. And all our people in India are blinded by digital communication. We have a very good telephone communication. We have the mobiles, and also we have digital communication between Germany and India as well. The fight against COVID-19 also shows how important it is to observe the very simple rules of hygiene. Simple hand washing with clean water and soap destroys the outer shell of the virus and stops its spread. It's not only simple, but it's also very inexpensive and feasible in countries like India. And we encourage all responsible authorities to educate people about easy to implement measures, and then to ensure that everyone has access to safe water and soap. It needs a lot of investment, but it's worth it. It's only with globally united forces, the COVID-19 crisis will be overcome worldwide. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Mr. Russell. This takes me to a short question to our ambassador. Can you please update us, Mr. Ambassador, on the EU-India Water Treaty, where we are today and what we are expecting in the next months?
Well, I guess you are referring to the water partnership.
The partnership,
Indeed,
sorry.
Yes, no, sure. No, I think it's a pretty good example of the partnership that we have developed with India. And it has been developing very positively in the past few years. I think the Indian side has recognized that we have some experience that we can share. And the European side has realized that by comparing notes, we all have to gain. I mean, the challenge is clearly huge about the need to manage the Ganga basin, for instance. It chimes well with one of the major priorities set by the government of Prime Minister Modi. The Clean Ganga initiative is indeed the flagship initiative which has been launched by the government. So I think that's an opportunity for the EU and India to work together on a very practical basis. But at the same time, it's an initiative which is geared towards a global objective of sustainability. So I think I participated in a couple of events in the framework of the Water Partnership Initiative, and I was impressed by the level of commitment of all participants and the level of expertise. I mean, that was a pretty fertile ground for European and Indian stakeholders to come together and exchange views. So what I can say is that our assessment is very positive, and we definitely have the intention to continue on the same road.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So I just would like to have a question for Mr. Puneet Chakwan and Yatindra Sharma. Both are very much involved in startups. So in this particular phase, when we are, thinking about only, recovering established economies, how can they encourage young people not to give up their ideas to build something new? What are your thoughts on that? Because EU-India do have a collaboration also on the startup platform.
Sorry, I didn't understand the question really, Srita. So is it a Tata question or a Taj question?
No, it's not. It's not a Tata or a start question. I'm just talking about, maybe Mr. Sharma, you can start and Puneet can take over, because when we discuss about economy in this particular phase, we are very much focused on discussing about the established economies. And there is also a group of startup entrepreneurs who were on the verge of doing something new. and they are going down. So how can we keep up their encouragement? Because EU and India do have some good collaboration and thoughts and platform on startups also.
I think it's a very important topic what you have raised, Rita. And while we talk about startup economy in India, India has taken a huge lead in creating startups and startup, I should say, startup economy by itself. And in this startup economy, if you look at the first mover in terms of investment, today China's major investments, I mean, which are the unicorns now, when they were in a startup phase, all these investments have come. So point is that startup economy in India today, not only in terms of digital tech or not only in terms of service industry, it is also going beyond in terms of various solutions. And this is something where EU and India can collaborate much better way. And EU can definitely work out an ecosystem of incubators, which can form a good level of cooperation between startups which are coming up with innovative ideas in India, and they can work together with people over there and create their business breakthrough and going for a startup company, in a faster manner than whatever they are able to do today. Likewise, India has created such kind of incubation centers, but the point is that the level of investments in terms of live infrastructure to experiment, they are not so much in numbers and size what EU can offer. And this is something where startup economy in India can benefit in a big way if at all such kind of move is created in terms of mutual cooperation, number one. Number two, I think European companies who are into capital, private investments and equity investments and all that, they should have a closer look on Indian startups. Particularly, the startups are spreading all over India. It is not only limited to Bangalore. It is also in, small cities. It is also in metro cities all over. So these are the 2 points which I would like to make. And this will definitely benefit mutually. So that is my submission.
So thank you very much. Puneet, any thoughts on that? That will be
Yeah,
very
I think Mr. Sharma said it quite well. I would just build on that idea and say you should have concrete partners to begin with. So just going beyond Taj, I could always help the ambassador and yourself, Srita, to identify companies and opportunities within our group at the Tata Group level, and similar other groups could encourage, and vice versa. So it has to be both ways. Startups based out of EU, startups based out of India, they are very important for the growth of an economy like us, but also very important for the European Union, as every country in the Union is not in the same phase of the life cycle. So I think it could be a very interesting platform for partnership going forward.
Thank you very much. I'm trying to incorporate all the questions which were coming to me. So I just moved to Mr. Amit Gajwadi, and I have Amit, in this crisis phase, how are you perceiving Europe? I mean, you are catering to different industries. What is important from your perspective? What is important in Europe? What has been your perception and experience so far?
So I have had an amazingly positive experience working with Europe. I think the approachability, the adaptability, and the intent to partner has been fantastic. In fact, we've had some great business in Europe as well. But I also realized that obviously in the last few months, Europe has been pretty badly hit in multiple industries, not just the travel hospitality. So I think from an organization who's working with a lot of tech companies who understands technology, Sybage is very well suited to partner with a number of organizations within Europe and collaborate in a much more effective way. One of the key things which always came up in terms of question when you collaborate so far away in India and Europe was, how do we work so remote? How do we communicate? How do we discuss? And I think that part has completely gone away. For someone like us also, who was so high on technology, even we have discovered more and more new ways of collaboration. So I think that digital collaboration has become very strong, which builds the foundation for a much stronger partnership with Europe. Because see, all the other ingredients always existed, whether it's about the intent, whether it's about the partnership that EU or any company in EU and India wanted to make. Europe is very strong when it comes to technology as well. So people want to adapt to new technologies at all points of time. That's why you see organizations, enterprises working towards that as well. In fact, I have visited incubation centers within Europe, including Brussels, then in Berlin as well, which house so many startups, and it's fascinating to see the work that these startups have been doing. So I visited 3 of them, one in Netherlands and one in Brussels and one in Germany. And all 3 of them have been fantastic to interact with and give a glimpse. We always believe Silicon Valley leads it, but Europe is also pretty much at par with it. So with all these things being in place, now I think with the slight hesitation that remote work doesn't happen or the time difference causes an issue being out, I think there is such a strong probability of a better partnership and a stronger partnership that I'm pretty hopeful that once travel starts opening up and you're able to meet people a little bit more, collaborate a little bit more, there will be some amazing partnerships that can be forged, which 4 months back didn't look as much possible because of different reasons. But now I think they look very promising. Obviously, like I said, in the next few months, travel needs to start for that.
Thank you very much. So we are now, gradually closing down, and I just would like to give the floor to Ms. Marika Jackas, who is head of trade and economy of the EU delegation in India. And this will be very nice to hear from you. First of all, having you here, definitely very nice. Just to hear, how can we strengthen the business in this space? When we go to the media, read newspapers, and listen to the news, everybody is saying, okay, now it's not anymore make in India, it is made in India. So of course, SMEs and corporates in the EU are thinking, what does it mean for us? What does it mean for our collaboration? Where do I identify my opportunities still in the Indian subcontinent? So what are your thoughts on this? And where do you see that still there are a lot of opportunities left?
Okay, thank you, Shrita, very much for, first of all, for inviting me to this interaction. Good morning, no, good afternoon to everybody. I'm also happy to see Mr. Stefanek. I think we met a few years ago in India when you attended a delegation of parliamentarians visiting India. So nice to see you virtually again, hopefully one day in person again. I think the advantage of being the last speaker is that many things have been already said. So I'm going to elaborate a little bit on what also Mr. Stefanek said about the cooperation in the digital sector. And of course, as you said, Shrita, more about how we can enforce more the business cooperation, boost business, boost trade and investment between EU and India. And of course, this whole pandemic that we're now having, it has really transformed the way we're working. And the digital is becoming more and more important also in the EU-India cooperation. There are some new opportunities. It was already mentioned, for instance, fields such as healthcare. I think Mr. Sharma mentioned that. Education, but also financial access. Areas like e-shopping and these kind of areas which have now really become virtual with the pandemic. And in particular in healthcare, we have seen more collaboration, also on joint research activities. Research have not been so much mentioned here yet. I mean, there are now remote consultations, remote monitoring of patients, etc. And various research institutions and startups and companies have been developing a number of solutions in these areas. And these are certainly areas where also EU and Indian companies can collaborate together. Also, of course, the whole current situation has led to using much more digital tools for education purposes. Education was also mentioned here already. So this will also open some new opportunities. Now, what will this mean for EU-India trade and business cooperation? Maybe first of all, in the digital area, it has already been mentioned here, this vibrant startup scene that we already have between EU and India. The EU is offering already several initiatives which Indian startups and companies can benefit from. For example, there's currently a Dutch private investment company which is offering an investment opportunity for innovative startups in the fintech, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, augmented reality, virtual reality, blockchain, etc. So this is a scene or an area where we really have a lot going on for the moment. We have also launched a lot of research projects, inviting researchers in the EU and India to collaborate to develop solutions on COVID-19. And besides, I think this was also mentioned here already, the hackathons and ideathons. This could also drive participation of young entrepreneurs and startups in transforming this digitalization drive. So in all these areas, I really see a huge potential to increase the collaboration between EU and India. And then perhaps more generally, more broadly at policy level, we already heard Mr. Winkler earlier today about talking what is going on. I mean, he was very well informed, so I don't need to elaborate so much more on that. But of course, we are at government to government level, we are working very closely to build better conditions for businesses, both in the EU and India, to trade and invest. And perhaps just to recall, I know that already somebody recalled the trade figures, but I think it's worth mentioning that the EU is still the biggest trading partner in goods of India, even after Brexit. So we are now, we have a total of 80 billion of total trade, 80 billion euros of total trade, very tightly followed by the US and China, but we are still the #1 trading partner of India. And what was said here also, that of course this is very much still below the potential. So we could do much more. When it comes to trade in services, it has also increased now from about 13.5 billion in 2017 to 14.2 billion in 2018. This is exports. And imports are very much at the same level. So actually both in trading goods and trade in services, quite remarkably, the trade between EU and India is very balanced compared to many other countries such as US and China, for instance. Then when it comes to investments, we are really one of the biggest investors as well. The EU represents 22% of total FDI inflows in the last financial year. And our cumulative FDI is for the moment $73 billion US. So this is something also where we could do, while being the biggest, one of the biggest investors, we could of course invest much more. So when it comes to investments, a lot, I mean, India has really liberalized a lot of FDI in support of Make in India. Some already mentioned here the Make in India. And also the ease of doing business has improved. India is now the 63rd in the World Bank's ease of doing business ranking, and they have really gone up a lot in the recent years. However, while India is a huge and growing market, and with a big population and increasing middle class, it is still quite a complex market, especially for SMEs and smaller companies to invest in. And therefore, what somebody already mentioned here is the EU-India Investment Protection Agreement. It's something we are now looking into, whether we could get get talks going on this, because that would really provide EU companies and of course Indian companies also, when investing in EU, with some legal regulatory certainty when investing. So this is something that we have been in talks with, of course, in parallel, not to be forgotten, the FTA talks. But as Mr. Winkler said, a lot has changed in the last years. The EU FTAs are these days very comprehensive, very ambitious, including on trade and sustainable investment. So currently we see more the investment side as something where we seem to be closer in terms of perhaps getting something going. And apart from these, when it comes to business cooperation, I wanted just to mention we have a project for the moment whereby we really try to encourage companies both in EU and India to come together and cooperate and find new possibilities and opportunities in especially the sectors where we have already policy dialogues. So for instance, the water partnership, or in the sector of renewable energy, the circular economy, and of course in the digital sector. So by this project, we are trying to basically pool the demand in India and then try to find on the European side, with the focus on SMEs, to try to basically, how do I say, get the demand and supply to meet. So to try to bring companies together on both sides to work in these sectors where we already have a very vibrant cooperation. So especially in these green and digital sectors with a focus on SMEs. And as part of this project, we have already a year ago established something we call European Economic Group, the EEG, which means that we make the European, basically bilateral chambers and the European Business Group to work together and come together as a single European business voice to basically speak on behalf of all the European companies in India. And just as we speak today, they have an interaction with the Indian think tank Niti Aayog to basically discuss the various concerns and collaboration as well, and find solutions in areas like water, one of them that was already mentioned here today as well, e-mobility, infrastructure, etc. So just a few examples where our cooperation is very good and is increasing, and where there's a lot of potential also to move forward tomorrow. So just to conclude, I think we really have a very good cooperation with India, both in terms of, let's say, policy at government level, and also when it goes to really business level between businesses more and more. And perhaps this crisis will now bring even more opportunities, especially when it comes in these priority areas and the digital. So I think I stop there, and if there are any questions, I'm happy to take them. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Marika. And I think it's very important, maybe just to sum up a little bit, it's not Christmas time, but still I have a wish list for the upcoming EU-India summit, maybe, that we try to define more opportunities in the hospitality sector, especially because in the service sector, because these are the industries where people are really challenged at this point, and we need to encourage more startup cooperation, and definitely it is important that we have a continuous dialogue between both the biggest democracies of the world. Thank you very much, all of you, for participating, speakers, as well as guests and participants. And Mr. Stefanek, it would be very nice to have at least 1 or 2 sentences and remarks as concluding from you.
Thank you very much, Rita, for wonderful moderation. And I'd like to thank all the speakers, particularly to Mr. Ambassador. And I think all the speakers showed and declared that there is plenty of opportunities for our cooperation, because landscape is changing, not only from point of view of business, but also from point of view of mutual cooperation, for example, in defense and cooperation in foreign policy and so on. I think in terms of business, Marika Yakas summed up very nicely all the opportunities. So I see plenty of opportunities in digital agenda, green agenda, particularly more opportunities are growing for SMEs. And also she highlighted health and research. So I think learning is to stay in touch to prepare EU-India summit, and also maybe we can repeat similar event after some time in order to develop our cooperation, which has still not only solid but still more and more, I would say, more and more strengths than others' cooperation between EU and other parts of the world. So I'm very positive about the EU-India cooperation, seeing many challenges, many opportunities, and looking forward to cooperate with all of you. Thank you very much and have a nice day.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for this kind conclusion. I also thank the team behind who supported us preparing it. So we are looking forward to our next exchange, and thanks for your time, and have a very, very nice time ahead.